Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint by Sing Shong. Chapter 439. Dokja's Incarnation. Part 1. The boiling power of chaos encroached into the blood vessels in my entire body. One by one, fables began resisting against the invasion of this foreign power. Fable, one who opposes miracles, dreams of miracles. Fable, one who murdered an outer god, is resisting against your change. Great Fable, Demon World Spring, is protecting you. I barely managed to hold on to my wavering consciousness and staggered towards the sacred texts. I thought I heard voices coming from somewhere, which could have been a side effect of transforming into an outer god. I figured that my consciousness breaking apart somehow automatically activated Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint. However, it wasn't only one person this time, as if I was seeing many people's POVs, several voices came at me at the same time. I already knew. That was Yu Young Hyok. It was just too obvious from the get-go, you know. I thought that it might as well be Ji Hai. If he didn't tell us up front, then he must have had his reasons. Shin Yu Sung. I already was suspecting it too, you know? Di Dokja Hyung. Dokja Hyung. E Gilyong. Dokja SSI, Zhong Huiwen. To these folks who understood it all already without being told, just what could I possibly say to them? What a powerful Sun Wukong he is. Who could he be? That was Yi Hyan Song. I ended up smirking softly. Right, maybe it's for the best that he doesn't find out. I sensed my memories beginning to crumble away. Once the transformation into an outer god was over, all of my memories should scatter away like cosmic dust. Kim Dokja was scared. The fourth wall probably was aware of it already. That big talk of mine was nothing more than just a coward pretending to be tough. After losing all my memories, will I still remain as me? I did die a few times so far, but never have I lost all of my memories. What would happen to the me that remembers everything, from here onwards? What really scared him was not death. Even if I got to read them all again, would I be able to regain the emotions I felt back then in full? Fable, comrade of life and death, is looking at you. Fable, one who hunted the king of calamities, is looking at you. Fable, liberator of giants, is looking at you. Would I really be able to feel the same emotions that I felt during the acquisition of all these precious stories? And finally, the sacred texts were waiting for Kim Dokja right before his eyes. The Journey to the West remake. That book was the great fable itself. The moment I grasp it, this great fable would become Kim Dokja Company S, as well as the outer gods. Kim Dokja reached out towards the sacred texts. With this, we'd be able to complete this journey to the west. Suchuchuchuchu. It was at this moment that something strange happened. Due to the unexpected event in the scenario, your transformation into the outer god is being delayed. It's being delayed? Sparks exploding all around me got even more violent while the roars from the constellations grew further away. The flow of space-time was being warped strangely. Probability so powerful that it gave me chills and back-wetting goosebumps was being mobilized. It felt as if the entirety of the star stream was writhing around. Someone was intruding into the scenario by breaking through the distorted space. Great Dakibi, Hyoju, has incarnated to the scenario. Great Dakibi, Heech, has incarnated to the scenario. Great Dakibi, Harong, has incarnated to the scenario. Great Dakibi, Haram, has incarnated to the scenario. Great Dakibi, Haesol, has incarnated to the scenario. Several great Dakibis were incarnating before my eyes. Suchachachachasit. As if it had turned into stone, my hand reaching out towards the sacred texts froze up in place. This shouldn't be happening. You cannot acquire that story. Dakibis weren't able to interfere with the main scenarios. No, actually, some did try indirectly to pick fights with us, but there had never been an instance where a Dakibi with great as its classification personally distorted a scenario like this. However, these ones had bet away their probability and did indeed intervene with the scenario. Starstream is violently convulsing. Great Dakibis were also a part of the star stream. Even if they were tasked with controlling the system, they were not exempt from the consequences of abnormally abusing the probability. Perhaps that was the reason why the powerful sparks were dancing around wildly on the bodies of the great Dakibis. The forgotten ones need to remain forgotten. I thought I could understand just a little why they were willing to go this far. If I took the sacred texts and acquired the great fable in the process. Then, the outer gods they had been excluding from the story would officially be incorporated into a great fable. Outer gods were beings that couldn't be controlled fully by the system they possessed. Never mind the mid to lower grade, old beings, if the higher ranked outer gods were to enter the scenarios indiscriminately, then the star stream would fall into unbridled chaos. Even then, I simply had to complete this task. Give up. Statuses from the great Dakibis had tied my entire body down like chains, and my fingertips reaching out to the sacred texts came to a dead stop only a single hand span away. However, I didn't get flustered. As the great Dakibis appeared here while going against the probability, there was no doubt that another creature tasked with fixing the tilted balance of the distorted probability would appear soon. Kugugugugu. Speak of the devil, a whirlpool suddenly formed in the middle of the sky. It was the Great Hole. And an existence revealed itself and looked down at me from beyond the opening. Take the sacred texts, O apostle of. It was none other than the Weni king, the one I met back in the Nyas forest. Great Dakibis discovered the Weni's presence and roared out in sheer astonishment. How dare! The devil of the horizon, how dare you show yourself here? You do not possess the probability to appear in this scenario. The Weni king sneered back at them. It's the same story for you, too. The statuses of the great Dakibis and the Weni king collided, and my previously restrained body regained its freedom. And my hand crossed that final distance. Outer god transformation has resumed. The Weni king smiled brightly. Oh, dear star stream. The world you have erased shall advance once more. The moment my hand touched the sacred texts, my consciousness faded away within the brightly lit storm of electricity. I could barely sense what might happen from here onwards. I looked behind me and slowly closed my eyes. The only thing he could trust now was... Showers of light exploded and scattered in the distant sky. Even the 9 stars, even the 28 mansions, they all had no choice but to look at the explosion in that moment. Every constellation of the nebula, Emperor, is freaking out. Ygilyong, atop the dragon horse, was busy evading the 9 stars' attack until then, but even he had to bring his mount to a stop. Xin Yusung? Xin Yusung regained her consciousness and opened her eyes on top of the saddle. The moment she did, her eyes quickly snapped towards the western sky where Ygilyong was also looking at. Her heart was beating powerfully. Something has gone wrong. Eliminate these small fries quickly, Anne. The lords of the 9 stars and Emperor's historical figure-grade constellations recovered from their fluster and hurriedly rushed towards Ygilyong and Xin Yusung once more. The boy spoke up, his gaze still fixed to the western skies. I'll create a path, so get going. No one needed to explain it to them. The story they were searching for was over there. Go and rescue Dokja Hyung. That was where Kim Dokja was. Xin Yusung could sense it. Maybe, far better than anyone out there. Just as Ygilyong jumped off from the dragon horse and unleashed his status, Xin Yusung made her mount break out into a dash. The horse reverted back to the jade dragon and flew forward like a speedboat on the river's surface. A nostalgic scent of a fable wafted in from the distance. That's where she could see the starlight from her sponsor that protected her for a long time. It was shining so brightly like that, yet, why hadn't she been sure of it before? Countless questions raged on in her head before slipping away. Why was Kim Dokja in this place? Why didn't he reveal his true identity to anyone? Xin Yusung couldn't answer any of that. However, she felt that if Kim Dokja was lost again in that place, she'd never be able to see him ever again. Kwa. Beams of light fired by the 9 stars slammed into the dragon horse. Shin Yusung screamed as she plunged into the river water. However, there were creatures that dragged her back out of the water. Kim Dokja, Kim Dokja, Kim Dokja, Kim Dokja. We are. From when did this happen? Yogos that had been previously floating around gathered into a large group and were crossing the river. Somehow, she ended up on top of the group. Yogos were floating up like stepping stones and created the path forward. Save him, save him, save him, save him, save him. And as Shin Yusung ran on top of the Yogos, she belatedly realized it. The reason why Ajusi is here, it's for the sake of these guys. The moment she realized it, something welled up from deep inside her. She saw Kim Dokja's fable scattering away within the blinding rays of light. She didn't need anyone to explain to her that he was clearly in serious danger right now. Why does Ajusi, always alone? The first emotion she felt was resentment. Why didn't Kim Dokja ask his companions for help? There must have been a reason for that. She knew that. But he probably thought that this is for the best. Even then, there were some things that remained difficult to accept. It was the same story back in the Dark Castle, and also in the demon world. And even during the Great War of Saints and Demons, too. Their lengthy scenario was simply Kim Dokja's history of continued sacrifices. And that was why this resentment wasn't directed at Kim Dokja, but towards Shin Yusung herself. She was none other than Kim Dokja's incarnation, and that's why she felt this sadness. The pain she was experiencing right now was nothing when compared to his determination. For sure, Kim Dokja would have said something like, Yusung, listen. There's no weight to sadness. Shin Yusung didn't agree with those words. Sadness did indeed have weight. The despair of a person risking his life trying to save someone else, and another's grief born from powerlessness while watching that feat unfold, would never carry equal weight. In the end, to every human being, the most precious thing was themselves. And Kim Dokja risked everything of his, always. It was right at that time that the river water suddenly exploded in front of her eyes. Constellations of Emperor vomited out as they crashed back down to earth. Come, you disappeared stories. Accompanied by the voice reverberating throughout the world, the entire world began changing. Several great holes opened up in the various parts of the sky, and creatures possessing unimaginable statuses started to cross over. They were no longer the outer gods. Is participating in the role of extra. They were Yogos from the journey to the west. This was the final war to determine the owner of the sacred texts. The horde of shadowy demonic beings rushed in to put the finishing touches to the final pages of this lengthy tale. A spectacle akin to the world meeting its annihilation played out. And in the center of that apocalypse, Kim Dokja, with his two blank eyes, was wandering among the Yogos. Was Shin Yusung mistaken when she thought that he no longer seemed to be Kim Dokja, but a Yogo? I need to stop him. On top of the broken Yogo's path, Shin Yusung looked down at her small hand. It was a hand that she believed was capable of achieving things far greater than any adult could. And it had done precisely that many times before. However, at least in this moment, she felt that it was nothing but a child's small hand. The heavens split up and the ground caved in. The Tongtian River's waters overturned in its entirety, and the living creatures atop it died in their droves as blood and fables flooded out. Judge, Sakyamuna's successor, is looking at you. It was exactly then that she felt someone's gaze and heard that person's voice. Yusung, only you can do it. It was a voice she knew so well. Senga Uni? At this rate, Dokja SSI won't be able to come back. Only you can prevent that. There was not enough time to ask how something like this was possible. So, Shin Yusung only asked the necessary question first. What should I do? Yusung didn't answer her right away. However, what she did say sounded like a Buddha bringing up a new topic for a conversation. Do not forget your role. Shin Yusung stared momentarily at the sky in stupefaction, before her gaze shifted over to Kim Dokja's direction. A golden headband glowed faintly on top of Sun Wukong's head. She looked down at her fist again. It was still that of a little child's. But at the same time, it was the fist of Tang Sanzang, as well. Can I really do it? Her voice was trembling. Kim Dokja's figure staggered about in the distance. Fable, Demon King of Salvation, is continuing with its storytelling. Finally, the tears she was holding back broke free. But, that could be what a juicy wants, you know? And to such a child, Yu Sangha spoke. He has been alone for a very long time. Kim Dokja. To someone like that, telling him that he's not alone a few times won't suddenly change anything. Shin Yusung was Kim Dokja's incarnation. You need to tell him, always be next to him, and reaffirm it for him. As she cried, Shin Yusung stepped forward. Until he realizes that he's truly not alone anymore. She gathered every little scrap of her status and began running hard. Just like Kim Dokja using the way of the wind, she too gave everything she had and ran on top of the river. While stepping on the water's surface sinking in bit by bit, Shin Yusung shouted out loudly as if to tear out her vocal cords. A juicy. Kim Dokja wasn't listening. In the midst of the bloody battle between Yogos and the constellations, he was looking back at her with empty eyes as he slowly morphed into another Yogo. His body was changing. Kim Dokja was scattering away. Don't go. Please. Please don't go. She watched her sponsor slowly disappear right before her eyes and shouted even louder and louder. It didn't sound like words, but screams, instead. These were things that couldn't be conveyed with mere words. A brand new fable is sprouting within you. Not everyone could use special methods to communicate, and that was why fables existed. Words that couldn't be conveyed would become stories eventually. The golden letters of the Constrictive Sutra had become a fable, and they began emitting bright light now. I'm not going to give up. Just like how you keep rescuing me, a juicy, As the meteors rained down all around her, Shin Yusung looked straight at her star and told her tale. I'll definitely save you, . Chapter 440. Dokja's Incarnation. Part 2. The sounds of explosions spread out from the center of the battlefield. The surrounding atmosphere was going through a change. Ranks of Yogos were rushing over there and Emperor-S constellations continued to descend. Feihu's eyes chased after those ranks before shifting back to the enemy blocking his path. You're truly strong. Are there more incarnations like you in Korea? Zhang Huiwen's whole body was riddled with wounds. However, her status remained firm and unaffected, while her will to fight burned brightly. He looked down at his sliced-off chest and waist, the wounds inflicted by her steel sword. He wasn't fighting alone. Currently, both Erlang Shen and Prince Neza were aiding him, plus he was receiving support from his nebula, as well. Even then, he had failed to defeat a single incarnation from another fable chamber that entered the scenario as a mere bull demon king. Stop yapping and just come at me. Feihu stared into Zhang Huiwen's blazing eyes and slowly shook his head. The mere fact that we had to fight so bitterly against a single opponent already signifies our loss. As if he was no longer interested in fighting her anymore, he sheathed his weapon and looked at the distant sky. And more importantly, the true battlefield doesn't seem to be here. As those words came to an end, Feihu flung himself in the direction of the sacred texts, along with Erlang Shen and Prince Neza. Zhang Huiwen was about to hurriedly chase after them, but then, a battleship suddenly summoned onto the river took them away at a rapid pace. Activation of Hour of Judgment has ended. That was a really close call. If the fight continued on for a little bit longer, she would have lost for sure. As expected of Feihu. He wasn't a direct incarnation of the Emperor for nothing, it seemed. Constellation, demon-like Judge of Fire, is worriedly scanning the center of the battlefield. Wings of an archangel grew on Zhang Huiwen's shoulders. She began half running and half flying on the water. Just what is going on here? Several skirmishes were unfolding all around her and she couldn't tell where she should go first. E.g. Hai, battling against Emperor-S fleet. Yu Yung Hayok, fighting against the 28 Mansions constellations. Yi Gilyong, dealing with the lords of 9 stars. Dozens upon dozens of great holes had opened up in the sky, and the outer gods crossing over had all transformed into Yogos to battle the constellations. And in the center of it all, Yusung, a young girl, was reaching out towards a star. Asterisk. Shin Yusung studied Emperor-S constellations rushing at her. Nebula Emperor-S 12 star lords are descending. Nebula Emperor-S dragon kings of the 4 seas are descending. One by one, Sun Wukong's sworn enemies were gathering. It's not over yet. It's fine as long as Tang Sanzang doesn't touch the sacred texts. Divide the army. One side shall retrieve the texts, while the others will suppress their Sanzang. She grabbed tightly onto the Chimera Dragon's mane, currently in its Jade Dragon form. The main attack force of Emperor was now taking aim at her. Kim Dokja, meanwhile, was still too far from her. Emperor-S 12 star lords are bearing their statuses. Kaboom! Light exploded before her eyes. The Chimera Dragon protected her by wrapping around her body. Choking heat penetrated into her entire figure. The second and third explosions went off one after the other, and the dragon screeched out loudly. Shin Yusung gritted her teeth and leapt up by stepping on her mount's back. Your sponsor's blessing is influencing you. Your stunning talent has blossomed. You have comprehended the way of the wind on your own. She didn't know how this was possible, but still, Yusung ran on the river's surface. The blessing of way of the wind was exploding out from the tips of her feet, and golden ripples spread out everywhere they landed. Shin Yusung ran as Kim Dokja had taught. This was the same method that her sponsor used to run. A mixture of blades and spears pounced on her from the surroundings. 3 from the left, 1 from right. 2 more, from below. She evaded them all by a hair's breadth. However, the more she dodged, the more vicious the attacks became. Hundreds of sharp blades rained down like a dangerous storm. It was a spectacle akin to a monster opening its maw wide to bear hundreds of fangs at her. And as she found herself right in front of such a monster, Shin Yusung pulled out a dagger from her inner pocket. Shin Yusung analyzed the situation like Yu Yunghyak dot. There was something she learned from Yu Yunghyak some time ago. Fable, Conquering King's Disciple, has begun its storytelling. In the future, you shall become the Beast Lord. Countless monstrous beings will cower before your feet and serve you. However, that does not mean you can become friends with every monster out there. During Kim Dokja's 3-year absence, Yu Yunghyak taught her how to hunt. Ways to face off against large monsters. Ways to hunt monsters with sturdy outer shells. And even ways to kill monsters that were hard to fight against in close quarters. If you must kill, then do not hesitate and end its life. If you don't, the one dying will be you. The moment she held her breath, she spotted a gap between the blades. It was the calm eye of the raging storm. She unleashed all of her status and threw the dagger in that gap. Quack 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 quack. Waves of wind scattered away, and the blades flying in at her fanned out away from her. Unfortunately, she couldn't evade every single weapon. A blade's edge brushed past her small figure. Blood spluttered out from her shoulder. Shin Yusung crouched as Yi Hyeonsong would dot. She crouched and, while hiding behind one of the floating debris, Yi Hyeonsong's face flitted in and out of her mind. This is how you hide, you see? Don't forget to always memorize the location of all the covers in your vicinity, okay? Ajusi, moving his bear-like huge body and assuming a crawling position with a troubled smile on his face. And then, Zhang Huiwen's voice, adding one more thing on top of what Yi Hyeonsong had said. It's possible that you won't find a place to hide if there are too many enemies around. You're right. The powers of the Dragon Kings of the 4 Seas were currently controlling the river. Sharp spears made out of water aimed at Shin Yusung's body and rushed in. Debris continued to explode one after the other, and there was no more place left to hide behind on the river's surface now. When that happens, you should use your enemies, instead. Like this. Han Suyong spoke as she grabbed and lifted the head of the crouching Yi Hyeonsong. Zhang Huiwen was shooting a glare at her, while Yi Gilyang was cackling away. Xin Yusung recalled all those memories and grabbed one of the incarnations attacking her to use as a shield. What are you? Kawak? Xin Yusung became as cold-hearted as Han Suyang. She discarded the incarnation body riddled with grisly holes and continued to run forward. She's a pretty smart kid. Do not let her get away. The distance to Kim Dokja had closed up quite a bit. Ajusi. Kim Dokja's figure stopped as if he heard her call. As she looked into his empty eyes, Xin Yusung recalled what Yu Sanga told her in the past. I'm sorry that the world is like this. She could see her companions gathering around one by one. I'm sorry that you got hurt like this. I'm sorry that you had to rely on powerless adults like us. Even if that's case, I'll promise you one thing. We'll always be by your side. We'll do our best so that you don't get to use these types of skills. Xin Yusung remembered those words well. To make sure that you don't forget who you are. Slice. A long spear brushed past her cheek. She unconsciously touched there as blood trickled down. No one was around to help her. Neither Yu Yonghyok's back that protected his companions, nor Zhang Huiwen's sword that she could always rely on, were here. A lengthy arm used the moment that she had lowered her guard and grabbed her collar. Emperor's 12 Star Lords were getting closer and closer. Didn't expect her to be a real kid. They let a child play such an important role? The status of Emperor that defied all attempts to resist pressured her entire frame. In any other normal circumstances, she'd never be able to fight against these enemies. Running away was the obvious route to take, and seeking help from her comrades was the best she could do. But, Xin Yusung didn't try to run away. Condensed fable has caused an abnormal event. She slowly blinked and opened her eyes. Her heart, previously pounding away like crazy, suddenly grew calm. A cold glint flickered in her eyes next. Incarnation, Xin Yusung's attribute evolution is imminent. You have found the opportunity to evolve your attribute. I'm not just a little child. What did you say? Xin Yusung grabbed the Star Lord's left arm. The powerful grip emanating from the child's hand caused the constellation's arm to tremble. My name is Xin Yusung. You have acquired a legendary attribute. You have become the Beast Lord. Xin Yusung, from Kim Dokja Company. A status as white as snow ran amok on the surface of the river. As the Star Lord screamed and backed away, a girl wearing a white coat made an appearance before their shocked eyes. Beast King's sensitivity. It was the greatest defensive skill of the Beast Lord deployed by Xin Yusung from the 41st turn. The surrounding river water overflowed and every Yogo, as well as monsters submerged under it, leapt out at once. Guoh! As if they wanted to pay respect to their king. Son of a... Where did these things come from? Attack! Kill these beasts first. Emperor's constellations began their bombardment. But a rising tide of monsters protected her. Chimera Dragon. Guayahawk. Affected by her attribute, the Chimera Dragon's body had grown even bigger. The creature swam in the water like an amugi and swallowed up the Star Lords while screeching out loudly. Constellations being torn apart by the sharp fangs, cried out. You stinking lizard! Xin Yusung disregarded those constellations and ran forward. Oh! Yusung. Yogos created a clear path for her. And now, the star was literally right before her nose. Ajusi! She shouted at Kim Dokja. However, he showed no signs of movement, as if her voice didn't reach him. It was then she heard the Weni King's laughter resound out as it battled the great Dakibis. It's too late. He now belongs to the great plotter. Those words seemed to be the trigger. The heavens above powerfully shook right away. Suchachachuchit. A great hole, boasting a size so immense that others couldn't even be compared to, was slowly revealing itself. Great Yogos on the river's surface simultaneously lowered themselves. All the fur on the white coat of the Beast King's sensitivity rose up like fuzzy hair. She could sense it without anyone telling her. The one descending right now, it was an existence far surpassing all the constellations of the Emperor Nebula. And Kim Dokja was now that creature's possession. I won't allow that. Tang Sanzang has recited the Constrictive Sutra. The moment Shin Yusung activated the skill, the golden headband on Kim Dokja's head began emitting bright light. Item, Constrictive Headband, is reacting. The Constrictive Headband was a treasure to control Sun Wukong. Didn't matter whether it was in Yogo transformation or not, every change taking place in Sun Wukong would come to a halt when the sutra was being recited. What foolishness! The Weni King status bore down on Shin Yusung's whole body. She tasted blood in the deepest part of her mouth. The coat created through Beast King sensitivity flapped around crazily. She staggered on her feet as she walked closer to Kim Dokja. One step closer, and yet one more step. She saw his messed up face, his gaunt cheeks. Her sponsor, his eyes quietly closed. A juicy. A brand new fable is sprouting in you. She still had so many things to tell him. She'd tell him about that stuff that saddened her. And also tell him that a juicy looked terrible right now. For the first time ever, she'd earnestly tell him everything. Please listen to my voice. She'd tell him that she wanted everyone to stop by at a PC Bang. She'd pester him to buy her pizza and cola and have a picnic by the Han River. And while talking about her impossible wishes in a world where many things have become impossible to enjoy, she'd become happy again. Her vision quaked and tears streamed down without rest. Finally, her hand touched the ends of Kim Dokja's fingertips. One hand covered in scars wrapped around yet another, also covered in wounds. It hurt as wounds rubbed against each other. Even then, Shin Yusung didn't let go of that hand. Quasi-myth-grade Fable, Savior of a Star, has been acquired. Fable, Savior of a Star, has begun its storytelling. I still have too many things I haven't told you yet. Like, when she was studying history with Sena Uni. Or, when she was cooking the hunted game with Yunghayaka Juicy. Back when she learned how to wield a sword from Huiwan Uni. And when she practiced riding a skateboard with Jihai Uni. Also, when Hyansung Juicy lifted her up and carried her around like an airplane. When she ate ice cream with Yi Gilyong and read a manhwa, knowing that the follow-up volume would never be released. Really. If only a Juicy was also in those memories. So many things. I'm not wishing for many things, she simply couldn't say those words. Because, the world's probability and the screwed-up star stream didn't allow that. I just wanted to be normal. The stars in the sky were moving quickly. Individual heavenly bodies sang their own fables and looked at her. Many audience members are looking at you. Actually, she understood it already. She knew that the ordinary happiness of an ordinary person in this world would not be able to attract any interest whatsoever. And that was why that ordinary happiness was the greatest luxury in a ruined world. Even then, audience members are paying the cost to reveal their modifiers. Constellation, Queen of the Darkest Spring, is. Constellation, Bald General of Justice, is. Even then, if someone was willing to hear her story. Constellation, Demon-like Judge of Fire, is. Constellation, Abyssal Black Flame Dragon, is. Constellation, Goryo's First Sword, is. As the indirect messages continued to pour in, Shin Yusung held Kim Dokja's hand even tighter. It was precisely at that moment that a certain indirect message landed in her ear. Judge, prisoner of the Golden Headband, has heard your story. Warmth began returning to Kim Dokja's hand. A blinding torrent of golden rays shot out from Sun Wukong's headband, and that was followed up by a raging storm of probabilities' powerful sparks. Constellations of Emperor shouted in their great astonishment. See, could it be? But that doesn't make sense. From several places in the sky, lightning bolt-like rays gathered towards Kim Dokja's figure. Judge, Baimoen, has heard your story. And in that moment, Something that had never happened before in the history of Journey to the West finally happened. Judge, Mai Hawang, has heard your story. The retired Sun Wukong has finally turned over a new leaf. Judge, Dozhanqing Fo, victorious fighting Buddha, wishes to hear your next story. Chapter 441. Dokja's Incarnation. Part 3. Exclusive skill, Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint 3rd stage, is currently active. My consciousness grew dim. The first thing I heard within this pitch-black darkness was the paragraphs coming to me from beyond, the fourth wall. In that moment, Ejihai looked at the battlefield. Ejihai's battlefield was there, alongside dozens of ships seemingly blanketing the whole of Tongtian River. Incarnations of Emperor prepared to fire the cannons, while historical figure-grade constellations were in charge of the command. Open fire! Emperor's battleships surrounding the Turtle Dragon commenced firing simultaneously. Ejihai advanced forward while brushing past the wreckages of other destroyed vessels. Some attacks she let them land her ship, while some others she dodged. Load the cannons. It was like watching an orchestra. Her ability to command the fleet, that had surely reached the realm of a naval god, allowed her to move the Turtle Dragon and the Ghost Fleet as she saw fit. Fire. Naval Admiral Ejihai's fleet opened fire. The Ghost Fleet had rearranged their formation according to her command, and they soon repeated the accurate hit-and-run tactic, and the enemy fleet tasted destruction in the blink of an eye. How can something this unbelievable be? Her ability to overcome the difference of overwhelming numbers, this was the moment that the true worth of the Naval Admiral, one of the strongest incarnations in the ways of survival, announced itself to the world. Constellation, Maritime War God, is proud of his incarnation. Ejihai actually surpassed her sponsor in the latter half of the original story. Maybe, I might get to see that spectacle unfold during this regression turn. We're changing our tactic. Perhaps they realized that things weren't going so well, as Emperor's fleet suddenly began charging at her. An armored battleship was taking the lead. It seemed that they had chosen to engage her in a close-quarter melee since they lost out in the long-range firefight. Unfortunately for them, though, there was something that they didn't know. Arg, I created this technique so that I could give Dokja Juicy a good one later on, but this. The thing was, the Naval Admiral Ejihai was also very handy in close-quarter battles, too. Seeing her crouched posture getting ready to draw her sword, I could just about guess what she was thinking of doing here. Instant kill. I could see that she had mastered one of the best anti-personnel combat skills in Ways of Survival. Huaya! As the loud explosions burst out from the side of the ship, Ejihai began her close-quarter combat. She cut, sliced, and then, cut some more. A sword demon's blade cut through the waves of water and reached the head of the enemy commander. And how much longer did she continue to cut after that? In the middle of the Tongtian's battlefield, now dyed crimson by the spreading fables, Ejihai lay on her back utterly fatigued, having dealt with all of her enemies. She stared at the darkening sky and asked softly as if she was talking to me. Ajusi. You're okay, right? I wanted to tell her that I was fine, but my lips didn't want to part. Your current level of proficiency for Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint is very high. It's now possible to split the POV. Character Zhang Huiwen's viewpoint has been added to the third-person POV. The second person I saw was Zhang Huiwen. Get out of my way. She was in the midst of chasing Fei Hu down. Yi Hyansong's blade, as she held him tightly, was busy shooting out the licks of flames belonging to Hellfire. Everywhere she passed by, ashes danced in the air. I could more or less figure out what happened here. To think that Fei Hu gave up on the fight first. Maybe the strongest incarnation in Korea was Zhang Huiwen, after all. Character Jang Haiyang's viewpoint has been added to the third-person POV. Jang Haiyang, still wearing the fake beard, was running on the river, Han Myong-o stuck under her arm. The end of her gaze was fixed on Yi Gilyong, currently engaged in a bitter battle against the Lords of the Nine Stars. Hey, kid! Step aside. The Lords of the Nine Stars were a part of Emperor's elite forces. Zhang Haiyang got ready to unleash the power of breaking the Sky Force punch at them. However, Yi Gilyang shook his head and shouted back. Please don't interfere, Haiyang Yi Hyang. I'm more than enough for this. He looked at the distant center of the battlefield and gritted his teeth. I can't lose to Xin Yusung. Yi Gilyang's voice, darkness seemingly overflowing from it, was tinged with an ominous undertone. And in the following moment, a yellow-colored storm exploded out from the boy's entire body. No, hang on a sec. Could that be? Before I could come to any sort of conclusion, the scene changed. Character Yu Yoonhyuk's viewpoint has been added to the third-person POV. Next up was Yu Yoonhyuk, currently facing off against the 28 Mansions constellations by himself. No matter how strong he is, in the end, he's still an incarnation from a weak little nebula. You think a lone bastard like yourself can deal with actual stars? Even though they were acting tough, Yu Yoonhyuk's hand was currently holding a couple of severed heads belonging to dead stars. His coat had turned into a tattered rag from the concerted attacks of the 28 Mansions, and there was a noticeable wound on his arm, but beside that, he was completely fine. If you're talking about constellations, then I've cut down plenty of your kind already. Blood trickled down his forehead. His hair stained by the constellation's fables danced about, and like some kind of an evil monster, Yu Yoonhyuk raised his head up. And that is why all of you will fall today. And the screen changed for the final time. A juicy. It was my own incarnation. Please listen to my voice. Her figure trembled as if she was sobbing. Next up, I saw my hand, held tightly in hers. That limp, powerless hand couldn't even hold hers at all. Her words cut off intermittently, and the things I need to say to her and the things I need to hear from her all disappeared in between the flitting words. Fable, Savior of a Star, is continuing on with its storytelling. I wanted to move. I wanted to wipe her tears away. I wanted to kneel down and hug her, before telling her that her wishes were also mine, too. Suchachachuchit. Memories were crumbling away. Letters floated around the surroundings. I sensed myself scatter away inside this darkness. I heard a voice calling out to me from beyond the empty abyss. I saw something resembling a violently whipping, great hole, in the distance. Slowly, very slowly, my soul was being sucked in there. Timidaku epourpr omi. I was scared. If I were to forget all of these emotions, where would they go to, then? And from where and to how far would the fourth wall remember my story? But. Bu suddenly appeared and grabbed hold of my soul being sucked out. She did everything in her power to pull back at that clump of soul. But I could only look on at her confused, flustered struggling. I, too, didn't want to go there. Komita thesida of thegreatplot tur, that was, if only I could. Are you really planning to go there? Along with the noise of psuchachuchu, the flow of the surrounding atmosphere changed. The letters stopped scattering away, and the suction force pulling at my soul disappeared. Someone was using his own status to forcibly suppress my extinguishment. This master sun is asking you. I looked back and discovered a rather familiar constellation standing there. His platinum blonde hair gently danced in the air, and his headband was emitting a soft glow. Great Sage. Indeed, it was the Great Sage Heaven's equal, a mischievous smile etched on his lips. However, he wasn't alone this time. The Re-Artumon New York Sun Wukong's here. Oh, so that's the fragment of the final wall that I heard about? What a noisy bastard. What an interesting visualized world this is. One was a handsome monkey kitted out in a cowboy getup, while the other monkey had this languid expression on his face, his hand stuck under the tiger-striped thong and busy scratching away at something. I immediately recognized who they were. Are you Baimoen and Mai Hawang? Before any reply could come to me, voices resounded out from the air above. Ki-ing of Mo and Keys. Areo upl and ni into and terfreyths. Ugh, shut up. We're busy talking here. Mai Hawang got irritated and unleashed his power, causing the ripples from the outer gods to instantly disappear. That was truly a gobsmacking status. Demon King of Salvation, we came here to ask you about something. The one who said that was not the great sage, Mai Hawang, nor was it Baimoan. Someone I had never seen before was there. He had an exotic countenance, a face oozing with this mysterious aura, preventing anyone from identifying his gender. Short, neatly trimmed black hair, and an elegant Buddhist robe on his frame. And judging by the fact that he was also carrying a Rui Jing Gubang, he too was definitely Sun Wukong. The odd thing was, though, I couldn't see the usual constrictive headband on his head. To Kim Dokja's knowledge, there was only one Sun Wukong like that in the world. Dizhan Shengfo, victorious fighting Buddha. Suchachachuchit. Thin sparks exploded in the air as if to react to what I said. Dizhan Shengfo asked me with an expressionless face. I've been watching your story from the beginning. My apologies for that. It was a fable with a meaning. Even out of all those numerous times when the journey to the west repeated itself, there never had been a fable that focused itself on the pain of the dying yogos. Mai Hawang, listening to him talk on the side, muttered, "Here comes the sermon-loving idiot." Completely disregarding him, Dizhang Shengfo continued on. However, their pain is their preordained destiny. Not everyone can become protagonists, after all. Why do you think so? You speak as if all yogos are victims, but not all of them are wrongly thrust into their positions. Some among them had never worked hard once in their lives, while some carry evil intentions and choose to hurt others. Therefore, it is quite obvious that they will never become the main characters. You're correct. However, just like what you've implied, some of them are not guilty of anything. No, make that quite a lot of them. And that is why countless fables exist in this world. Great fables aren't the only good fables. Those who are nothing more than small, insignificant beings inside a great fable can still become the main character of a different fable. He was right. Indeed, as right as it can be. However, that is only applicable when they are allowed to participate in fables. There were some creatures in this world that were excluded from entering even those fables. Beings that were simply spent as expendables in various fables while not even receiving a single % of shares. Ah! Come. Fables should be permitted to even those who have failed. The ones that had forgotten about themselves weren't even allowed to enjoy the opportunities of the scenarios. The star stream gagged them and made sure that their words would become incomprehensible to others. Is that what you truly believe? Dizhan Shengfo asked, his unreadable eyes still locked on me. No, more correctly, he was looking at the power of chaos rising out from my body. And you wish to sacrifice your whole being and become an outer god? That's correct. The great sage was yawning with a bored face during my answer, and once he was done, spoke his opinion. Are you done with your confirmation? I told you, didn't I? This guy's really like that. Indeed. Seriously, man. Convincing the dear old Buddhanim is the hardest thing ever. I had no clue what these guys were talking about. For Sun Wukongs glanced at me while yapping among themselves. Okay, so. Who's going to do it, then? I shall do it. I had lost most of my memories after I was granted the Buddhahood, after all. Well, I guess you being a fakey monk can be helpful in situations like this one. Right in the next moment, bright light rose up all around me, causing my scattering memories to come back. And as the probability sparks exploded, my body glowed brightly too, as if I was being electrocuted. Someone is dealing with the penalty of outer god transformation in your stead. Wah! Demon King of Salvation, you're wrong about one thing, said Dizhan Shengfo, as he unleashed the power of chaos. Becoming a yogo will not help you in understanding them. You simply do not have the qualifications to represent them. He was right once more. I couldn't possibly have known anything about the outer gods suffering pain and agony as the Yogos from the journey to the west. Because I was just another actor playing Sun Wukong. Mai Hawang sniggered and remarked sarcastically. You should know your place. Baimawen quickly added something else. Your main topic is not in this place. The last person to speak up was the great sage. Leave the matters of Yogos to other Yogos. And you should live your own fable. Only then did I finally figure out what was going on here. Great Fable, Journey to the West, has begun its storytelling for you. But, why? Why were they doing this for me? The great sage smirked and replied. Because we like your fable. That's all. I thought I could hear the loud roars of the upper-rank outer gods coming from afar. At the same time, I sensed the power of the outer gods strengthening gradually. He is. Ours. My bad, but we can't give him to you. No. King is coming. The great hole continued to churn angrily within the darkness. Something was trying to descend to this world. It was the king of all these outer gods. Constellation, secretive plotter, is glaring at the prisoner of the golden headband. That message brought out a bright smile on the great sage's face. Right, I wanted to have a go at you sometime, didn't I? For Sun Wukongs stood all around me. So, who'll be the main this time? Of course, it'll be me, the great sage. And thus the dumbass Sun Wukong is born. Hey, you. Don't flip your finger like that. You think this is a fusion fantasy? In the following moment, Sun Wukongs around me grasped each other's hands. Oh, Star Stream. We will be accepting the Demon King of Salvation as our fifth self.